All right, let's jump right into this. We're looking at a massive claim coming from Donald Trump. His camp is saying that the war with Iran, yeah, it's pretty much over. They're ready to wind it down because, get this, they say the U.S. has already achieved every single one of its goals.
And look, this wasn't some random tweet storm. The source material we're digging into makes it clear this was a very deliberate, specific message. It came through his press secretary, blasted out on social media. It felt totally pre-planned. It was basically signaling to the world, hey, we're building the off-ramp here. The message couldn't be clearer. Mission accomplished.
But, and this is the big but, isn't it? That right there is the question we're going to tackle in this whole explainer. Once you look past that big victory lap and actually dig into what the source material says is happening on the ground, well, a very different picture starts to take shape. So let's do it. Let's audit this claim.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the official victory checklist that Trump laid out. Then, one by one, we're going to check those 5 objectives against what our source says is really going on. And that leads us to the final and maybe most important question. If the mission isn't accomplished, then who's really holding all the cards?
All right, first things first. Before we can, grade the homework, we need to see what the assignment was. And the Trump administration was super specific about its goals. So let's lay out those 5 official objectives they're claiming are now complete.
So there you have it. That's the list. I mean, it's pretty ambitious, right? A complete takedown of Iran's ability to fight back and a promise to keep all of America's allies in the region safe. And, according to Trump, it's all done. Check, 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 and check. Okay, now it's our turn to put that to the test.
Okay, let's start with objective number 1. Iran's missile capabilities. You could argue this is the big one, the most critical military goal of them all. And the claim is simple. That threat, it's been neutralized. Gone.
And whoa, look at the contrast here. The claim is destroyed, total success. But the reality, according to our source, it's a completely different story. Iran has apparently been firing ballistic missiles with a 4,000-kilometer range. Now, to put that in perspective, the previous assumption was about 2,000 kilometers, so they've doubled their known range during the conflict. That's not destroyed, far from it. It looks like their capability has actually gotten stronger.
All right, next up, we're going to group the next 3 objectives together, because they're all kind of related. We're talking about dismantling their defense industry, taking out their Navy and Air Force, and shutting down their nuclear program. Basically, the whole engine of Iran's war machine.
And this table really lays out the problem with that whole mission accomplished story. Let's look at the defense industry. The claim is achieved, but the source says it's inconclusive. Iran is actually claiming it's still churning out new missiles. Then you have the Navy and Air Force. Yeah, Iran's Air Force is small, but get this. They managed to shoot down a U.S. F-35 stealth jet, an F-35. That's one of the most advanced, most expensive, most invisible planes in the world. That's a huge deal. And the nuclear program? Well, it's apparently still up and running, and nobody knows where their enriched material is. Doesn't sound disabled to me.
Okay, that brings us to the 5th and final objective. And honestly, this one's a really big deal. The whole point of all this, at least according to the official story, was to make the region safer for America's allies. So, did it work?
Well, the source paints a pretty bleak picture. It says that far from being protected, the regional allies are in a terrible state, and the ripple effects go way beyond the region. All this instability in a huge oil-producing area, it's expected to make gas and petrol prices spike for everyone. So instead of creating stability, it sounds like this conflict has actually made things a lot more chaotic.
So when you take a step back and look at the whole thing, the analysis from our source points to one pretty stark conclusion. Not a single one of these 5 objectives can be confirmed as complete. Not one. I mean, in some cases, the claims are flat out contradicted by what's happening, and in others, we just don't know. It's a huge question mark.
Which brings us to a really fascinating question. If these victory claims are built on such shaky ground, is the U.S. really calling the shots? Or has the balance of power actually shifted? Let's take a look at who seems to be in the driver's seat now.
Now check this out. This is pretty incredible. Our source, which is a news analysis channel, ran a live poll with its audience. We're talking over 12,000 people. They asked a simple question. Who holds the cards to end this war? And the result? A whopping 62% said Iran. Only 26% said America. That is a massive public perception shift about who's really in control.
So, why do people think that? While the source gives us a few clues about Iran's leverage, apparently they're refusing to even take Trump's phone calls. They reportedly rejected a U.S. offer to lift economic sanctions if they just agree to sell their oil. I mean, that's a huge deal, and they just said no thanks. On top of that, their demands for peace are intense. A complete U.S. withdrawal from the Gulf, written assurances, even reparations. These are not the moves of a country that's been defeated.
And so all of this leaves us with one last really critical question. If the objectives aren't met, and the other side seems to be holding all the cards, what does winding down the war actually mean? Is it a retreat? Is it a pivot? It really makes you wonder. And I think that's the key takeaway here, that to get the real story, you have to look past the victory speeches and see who is actually dictating the terms on the ground.